Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the season finale of The Penguin, which just aired last night. It was called Great or Little Thing. And as it starts, in a hypnosis-induced flashback, Frances is visited by local gangster Rex, who says he's worried about her and who offers to pay for the funeral for the boys. It turns out, though, that she found the flashlight in Oz's coat and realized that he killed his brothers, so she stopped talking to him. Rex advises her to look past what he did and lean into his devotion to her and use it to turn him into somebody who could do great things. And so she asks him for his help doing it, which we know she did. In the flashback, Oswald promises his mother he's going to get her the very best, which in the present, he still hasn't managed to do, as we know. Again, in the present, Victor comes on the scene of the explosion with a posse made up of the other coalition members, but they bail when they realize the product is gone. Vic runs into one of the foot soldiers from the gang who tells him that Sophia was behind the explosion. Oswald wakes up in Sophia's hideout, the club where Francis went dancing with Oz after he killed his brothers, tied to a chair with a gag in his mouth. Sophia uses an anecdote to reveal to Oswald that she knows what he did to his brothers and how his mother treated Oswald after. Apparently, Francis had asked Rex to kill Oz after that night at the club, but she stopped him. And Sophia asks Francis if it was worth it keeping him alive, and Francis smacks her across the face. Sophia then threatens to cut off one of Francis's fingers to get Oz to confess to what he did to his brothers, but he keeps denying it, and Francis tells him to just say it out loud already because she already knows. But he continues to deny it, and Francis says she hates him for what he did, and Sophia let her keep her finger. Francis says to Oz that he didn't have to do what he did. There was enough of her to go around, and that he's a disgrace, and that she should have let Rex kill him before stabbing him in the gut with a broken beer bottle and calling him the devil, at which point she hallucinates that he's his younger self and that his brothers are there soaking wet, before she seemingly has a stroke. Oz somehow manages to push himself out of the chair he's tied to and to get a hold of one of the henchman's guns and break out of the club with his mother, who he loads into a Chevy Impala like a sack of potatoes, before driving off and taking her to a hospital. He then steals a phone and calls Victor and skulks off to like a supply closet to treat his stab wound himself with a staple gun and rubbing alcohol. Victor apologizes for not being able to rally the troops, and Oz tells him that it isn't his fault because he doesn't have anything to offer the troops anymore. And Victor reminds him that that's not true, that he got the power back on and he gave people jobs. And he tells Oz to get up and keep fighting. And Oz ribs him because he figured that he must have practiced the speech, and he tells him next time, just project a little more. Sophia then assembles all of Oz's allies and tells them she's leaving Gotham and that whoever brings her Oz first can have all of her territories and businesses and whatever else. Link from the Triads calls Vic and says he knows Penguin is alive, and he tells Victor that Sophia put a bounty out on Oz and that they can do something about it, but it has to be quick and that he needs to know where they are. Oz goes into the city council chambers at City Hall before confronting the councilman that he put the screws to get the lights back on. He tells the councilman that Sophia did everything that he did with the drugs and all of that, killing Sal's family and everything, and that the city will soon be able to pull Sal's body out of the hole along with Sophia's car. He tells the councilman that he has an opportunity now to make everybody love him if he points the finger at Sophia, especially after he was the one that got the lights back on at Crown Point, as far as anybody knows. Oz says that in exchange he wants to be welcomed around City Hall, and the councilman tells him that the mayor is cracking down on the criminal element in Gotham, and that the Penguin will probably be subpoenaed, and that if he wants to feel welcome, he's going to have to clean himself up. He then leaves City Hall to find Link and his goons waiting for him. Sophia gets a call from the Triad saying that they have Oz, so she arranges to meet with them at her hangar at the airport as she's on her way out of Gotham, after dousing her father's house in alcohol and throwing lit cigarettes on the alcohol-soaked floors one room at a time. Sophia meets the Triad to collect Oz, but the leader finds himself mortally betrayed by his own men, at which point Oz and Victor kill Sophia's men and take her hostage for a car ride. Over the course of the ride, Oz explains to her that the members of the other groups he had aligned to work with him have also taken out their leaders. He takes her to a remote spot by the water under one of Gotham's bridges and orders her to turn around at gunpoint. Sophia tells him that she didn't realize he was a monster, but his mother always knew. And he tells her that she's going to hell And she says she'll save him a seat there before turning around and hearing Oz cock the gun. But the shot never comes, as a helicopter then shows up and shines a big light down on her, and the cops arrive in force in their cruisers, with Oz nowhere to be found. Oz and Victor then arrive at the hospital, and Oz explains to his mother how he nailed Sophia as they watch the news of her capture, but it would seem that she's in a persistent vegetative state. Despite this, he kneels at her bedside to try to explain to her that he finally took everything away from the other crime bosses. He begs her to tell him that she's proud of him before absolutely breaking down and sobbing while holding her hand at the top of his head as if she were doing it. As Oz and Victor commiserate down by the water, Oz asks Victor if he thinks his mother forgives him. And when he says, "For what?" Oz says, "I don't know, all kinds of things." Victor then thanks Oz for taking him under his wing and tells him that he sees him as family. But Oz then tells Victor he can't continue to take him with him on his journey and starts to strangle him because he's afraid that being close with Victor will make him weak. He apologizes to Victor repeatedly, saying he's a good man with a good heart as he's killing him. He then takes the money out of Victor's wallet and tosses his ID in the Gotham River, walking away from Victor's body like it was so much garbage. Sophia finds herself back in Arkham with Julian once again as her doctor, and he brings her some mail from Selina Kyle, which explains that Sophia and she are half sisters. As the episode ends, Oz parks his fancy car outside of a high-rise building that apparently he purchased and heads inside wearing a fancy tux with a top coat, carrying a top hat, where he finds his mom in a hospital bed hooked up to machines in an empty room with a great view over the city, explaining to her that he finally got her up to the penthouse. He then joins his hooker girlfriend in another part of the building and dances with her while she wears his mother's dress and role plays his mother for him. As we fade to the credits, the bat signal goes up over the city. So this finale was just amazing, absolutely fantastic, and I'm not the least bit surprised because every episode of this show has been fantastic. I was so nonplussed when I heard they were making the series. I was like, yeah, okay, a Penguin show. Yeah, okay, whatever. The Batman was a decent movie. You know, Colin did a good job as the Penguin in the movie, but who the hell is going to watch this show? But because I have this channel and because I'm a DC fan, I said, well, I'll watch it. I was hooked from the beginning. I thought it was awesome from the beginning. This finale did not disappoint. It wrapped up the season spectacularly. And this is one of the best shows that's been on TV in a very long time. The cast was amazing. I, I couldn't have asked for a better foil for Oz than Sofia Gigante or Sevilla Falcone. Just an incredible mental chess game being played between the two of them, and on the side, Sal Maroni as well, and other forces in the city the whole time. And the character that they built up in their version of Penguin is just incredible. The psyche that they created for him and that they let us in on of, that shows what drives him and that he does have vulnerabilities, but while they tried to portray him as a guy who had a sense of honor among thieves, as it were, and a sense of loyalty to Vic, at least his one constant Northern Star right-hand man, which all throughout the season I loved and found to be like a redeeming quality of the character and a quality that made the character seem real and three-dimensional and not a comic book character. They then flipped that on its head when they showed not only that he's a monster who killed his brothers in cold blood because he wanted his mother all to himself, but that he then just cold, straight up murdered Victor for no reason other than he thought Victor was going to be a liability to him. Now, granted, it's because he cared about Victor and he knew that would come back to haunt him and could be a source of weakness for him. So on the one hand, it's like, okay, he's human, he likes the guy, and he knows that he's a weakness. But unlike a hero who tries to mitigate that by putting distance between themselves and the person they care about in the form of a secret identity or what have you, Penguin just straight up murders him. And I thought that was excellent because it brings the character back to the way the character has been in other DC media. He's a raving lunatic. He's a murderous psychopath. He's a bloodthirsty killer of a thug. And so I thought that was appropriate, but I still like the fact that at the same time they built him out to have more dimension. So I just think the finale sort of brought the character full circle and didn't leave any doubt at the end that, okay, yeah, he's got these sensibilities, but never forget he's a freaking monster. He was a monster from the time he was a kid. And even though he can be loyal when it suits him in the moment, ultimately he only cares about one thing, and that's, well, two things, himself and his mother. But now that his mother is non compos mentis, he doesn't care about anything but himself. And he even killed the one other person besides his mother that he cared about in cold blood and kicked him away like so much garbage. And I don't like that that occurred because I liked the relationship between those two characters and I liked that they cared about each other and that it was mutual. I thought that was a great aspect of the show. So I'm bummed on that one hand, but on the other hand, the weight that it added to the story, the weight that it added to this character, the dimension that it added to this character, that he could just up and murder him in cold blood like that was just stultifying and mind-blowing and just makes your blood curdle. And that's the mark of a fantastic show. And this show certainly was that. What I'm wondering is whether there's going to be a season two. Colin says he's ready to do a season two and that he's got a few scenes already in the next Batman movie. So that's good. If they don't do season two, I think they left it in a great place considering we are, of course, going to see the character again. So the origin story is, complete, as it were. I don't think they need a season two, but I would certainly watch it. I don't want to downplay either or give short shrift to what happens at the end with his girlfriend, who he had dressed up like his mother and pretend to be his mother. Like, what's going on there? That was some weird, weird stuff. And I just was mind blown by all of that. I think it was all great writing choices were made there. And throughout the show, I'm intrigued by what could be transpiring in future projects between Selena and Sophia, because after all, they are in fact half sisters. So that will be interesting. The one thing I would say about the show that kind of didn't really work for me that I mentioned before is the fact that Batman is completely absent. I certainly don't think the show needed Batman in it to be a good show, his physical presence. But so much goes on in this show between the triads and the Falcones and the Maronis and Penguin and the drug trade in Gotham. And then there's a freaking explosion in that one downtrodden part of town. And we see that that part of town has all kinds of buildings still in shambles after the flood and cars upended on top of each other and were without power and not even a whisper of Batman. Not only that, there's not a whisper of Bruce Wayne. Where's Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist? Why was that part of town, Crown Point, left like that for so long? Why were those people without power for so long? In the Batman, they did a little bit of pish posh about how Bruce Wayne wasn't the philanthropist his father was, but by the end of the movie, you get the feeling that that's changed. So why was Crown Point left that way for so long? Why is this big explosion going off and these drugs are being sold all over town and these movers and shakers are moving and shaking in the criminal underworld? No Batman. No resources coming from Bruce Wayne. It didn't make sense. Again, you don't need him to make the show good, but leaving him out completely, either one of his personalities, just left a hole in the story that makes you go, Yeah, that's not how it would have gone down. There would have been signs that Batman existed and signs that Bruce Wayne existed, and there were none. So that kind of bothered me. And I think it's fine that at the end they flick on the bat signal, but like, really, now Batman's paying attention? I thought it was a little weird that things got that far out of control before we even saw the bat signal or any mention of Batman or any mention of Bruce Wayne. I just thought that was kind of a glaring absence. But, it's easy enough to overlook because the rest of what happened on the show was so goddamn fantastic. So I've been thrilled with this season. I'm thrilled with the finale. I'm looking forward to more with these characters. And, that's really all there is to say. So before I start repeating myself, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.